welcome to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and I'm sitting right here in front of my movie wall, and I'm going to talk to you today about Star Wars The Last Jedi. As you can see, I'm wearing my Star Wars The Last Jedi shirt, and I just kind of wanted to go over a few things that people have been posting up online, and some of the fallacies that these people are using to say that their critics or the people that are defending the movie are saying about them. And typically the people that are doing that are the fans. So I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. I have been since the middle 90s. And one of the things that I think we need to get out of the way just right off the bat is canonicity. Canonicity is when you have certain stories and certain things that are going to make the story. They're going to create a timeline of some kind. And this has been a debate, a huge debate, since the 90s. Really when Star Wars kind of became popular. It was kind of a cult following. People just kind of watched it. And then in the middle 90s, Star Wars just exploded. Right around about 1994, 95, it just hit. Like, everybody wanted to play it. Wanted to play games, wanted to watch the movies, wanted to play card games, and wanted to do all this other stuff. So I think one of the biggest things that we need to really kind of discuss today is, the first thing is canonicity. So what is canon and what is not canon? So a lot of people have been going around and around on this whole debate of, is there lore in the Star Wars universe? Is there other things in the Star Wars universe? What is and isn't canon? So, first off, what originally happened before Disney purchased Lucasfilm, they had books that had a timeline in them that looked something like this. This book is from 2013. This is called Scoundrels. It's written by Timothy Zahn. And this was the original timeline. This was something that Lucas Books did, and Del Rey books and that kind of stuff, to kind of show people, like, this is what canon is or isn't. So that's kind of one of the things that you can tell. So if you don't have anything from the original timeline, so basically anything before about 2014, 2015, anything before that, this is probably what your books are going to look like. Now, after that, if you go down to like Barnes & Noble and buy a book, you're going to see this. This is the Legends banner right here. It says Legends right across that. And it also says Legends on the spine. So if the book's spine on, you can actually see that it says Legends. And it has the same exact timeline in it. Okay? And so you can kind of see that that was what they used for the timeline. So the thing is, if it's got that timeline in the book, or if it says Legends, this is no longer the Star Wars canon. This has no basis on any story unless they're using the character in the new continuity, in the Disney continuity. Now, the Disney continuity looks like this, and this is the actual novelization of Star Wars Episode 8. So this is what the new continuity looks like. So this is what it is, and it starts at Episode 1, and it just goes on down, and it even includes Rogue One. And I'm sure some of the newer ones, since this book has been published, because this book actually came out in March, and Solo came out in May. So Solo would probably be right up in here. Probably, I don't know where they're going to put it in terms of the timeline, but it'll be right up in here, between 3 and 4. Okay, and then the second page, which shows Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi, and then some of the intervening books. Okay, so the new Star Wars canon is being rewritten to kind of show people that it's like, hey, we heard you, that you loved reading these old novels, and you want novels that are well written, that people really enjoy, and so we're going to give you those. And so they're kind of like rewriting certain things. So characters like Tarkin um, and I mean, you got characters like Tarkin, you get characters like Thrawn, Phasma, which is kind of exploring Phasma's origins. There's new lore books being written. There's brand new things. One of the other things that's kind of interesting is I went down to the store and I picked up a couple of these visual dictionaries. This is The Force Awakens. And what's interesting is that in the beginning, then this is something that they used to have star atlases in certain books that would give you like all of the different planets and where they were in relation to each other. Now, the one thing is, I don't know if Camino got exploded or what, but this is the new Star Atlas. So this is kind of the new thing. And interesting to note, if you're a fan of the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic, that kind of thing, they have Rakata Prime. And they also have Rat Attack, which are a couple of planets from those games. And there's even, I'm trying to remember where it was in here, but they were talking about how there was a weapon that was left over from I have to find it, and if you want me to, I'll post it up in the comments section. But basically, there was a weapon that was left over from Malachor 5, the Battle of Malachor 5, from Knights of the Old Republic 2, which means those two video games, as well as the Old Republic video game, is now canon, according to the Star Wars Visual Dictionary. And it was written by Pablo Hidalgo, who is one of the main guys at Lucasfilm. So that was actually kind of interesting. So now that we've kind of established what canon is and isn't, now I want to kind of jump into this video that a guy named Brandon Malone from Left Foot Media, he kind of made a video. It's about 28-29 minutes long. I'm going to try to keep mine around about 45 minutes to an hour, so I'm going to kind of keep an eye on the time here and kind of look at it. But I'm going to kind of talk about, like, he's got this video that he says there's 6 things that fans of The Last Jedi are getting wrong. Fallacies that he thinks people are using that don't have any basis whatsoever in his kind of idea of what The Last Jedi is or isn't. So what I'm going to do is I actually printed off the transcript and I have some notes written that that I have. So forgive me if I'm looking down because I don't have all this information memorized. I'm going to try to look into the camera as much as I possibly can. But the thing is that this guy kind of rambles on about, bad storytelling and all this other stuff. He doesn't really come up with any concrete examples, other than, like, there's a couple of points where he talks about, oh, well, we don't like the way that they did Luke, like, the whole Luke Kylo Ren thing. There was that, and we don't like this, and just little nitpicky things, not really big story elements like, oh my gosh, I can't believe there's this, and he talks a little bit about Leia, so we'll kind of address that towards the end. So I guess one of the biggest things is, being a huge Star Wars fan like I am, I really don't like it when it's like the in thing to, kind of like force people to do things. You force people to your point of view and kind of like, it's okay to hate on Star Wars and to, make people want to think that you're just kind of, like, it's not cool because, it's the in thing to hate Star Wars right now. And I'm also not going to go into the SJW or anti-SJW. I'm not going to go into any of that. There isn't any. The people that are seeing it are the people that do it for a living, so they see this stuff all the time. Okay, that's what they do, and so to them, you could tell them that there's SJW moments in the original Die Hard, and they would go and pick apart the movie looking for SJW moments in the original Die Hard, even though there isn't any. And they would probably find something that they would misconstrue as an SJW moment, and then they would just, that's an SJW. This whole movie's ruined now for me because it's just SJW. So I'm not going to get into that, okay? I think a lot of things that happened were like one thing was I heard Mark Dice say that Disney ruined Star Wars because Admiral Holdo was a pink-haired lesbian. And I'm like, how the hell did you know that? There's nothing in the novelization. There's nothing in the visual dictionary. And I even own the Last Jedi visual dictionary. And nowhere in there does it say, oh, Admiral Holdo's a lesbian. No, it's just, that was their culture, actually. If you look at this, if you go pick this up at Barnes & Noble and just flip to the page with Admiral Holdo in it, and you'll just see that that's their culture. That's what they did. So I don't understand why these people just kind of look at this and they just kind of like, oh! So there are no SJW moments in there. Okay? Now, granted, in Solo there might have been a couple here and there, and I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. And if you haven't seen it, go see it, because it is a really good movie. But I guess one of the biggest things that I see right now is when people are kind of creating this image in their mind that it's like, okay, The Last Jedi was the worst film ever made. Okay? And that's kind of where this guy's coming from. It's the worst film ever made. And so nobody should defend it. Nobody should like it. Everybody should follow my advice and just hate it. Okay? And so I'm going to kind of go through, kind of give some highlights of his talking points. And then I'm going to post down in the comments section, I'm going to post a link to the video. So if you want to go and watch the full 28-minute video, and like I said, I printed off the transcript. I printed it on 2 pages because it's like 35 pages. And that's not even the whole thing, because I skipped over the part where, like, the first like 30 seconds, 45 seconds, he talks about why he's not in front of his usual wall. I guess he's got a green screen in his house and he does some things anyway. So I skipped over that stuff and went straight into where he starts actually kind of talking about, like, he kind of gives an introduction of what he's going to talk about and all this kind of stuff. So now that I've kind of set this up, I'm going to jump into this really quick, and I'm going to skip straight ahead and start talking about his first fallacy that he talks. He has got 6 fallacies that he thinks that fans like me, and if you're watching this, you might be a fan of The Last Jedi too, that fans like us are thinking, okay, when we try to defend this movie. And so I'm going to do my best. I'm going to use quotes from movies. I'm going to use some various other things, the visual dictionaries, to kind of back up some of my arguments so that people know that I'm not just freeballing here like this guy is. This guy didn't use any sources. He just kind of like threw out an argument and just kind of is like, you know, ugh. So let's just jump right into this thing, and we're going to do that. So fallacy number 1, he thinks, is that you've got to watch this. This is him. This is the critics of him talking. So the fans talking to him, saying that you've got to watch this movie more than once. And if you watch it more than once, you'll really get it. You'll understand. And his argument really is, this is not a piece of high art. This is not a high concept in the multi-layered impressionist art film. This is a pretty basic sort of blockbuster fantasy film. He said also that there are people that watched it once, and they were shocked and disappointed by it, and they went back a second time, and this time the expectations were so low because they were disappointed that now he thinks that what happened is they've actually started to accept or turn a blind eye to the blatant problems in this film. He thinks it's not multi-layered. It's not a No Country for Old Men kind of a thing. He also is kind of saying, so that's kind of what he's saying there, is that, and he's saying, trust your initial instincts when you come see this movie. This fallacy, this is me now, this fallacy from Brent from Brendan's point of view is not that we want you to watch it because it's high art. And that's such a pretentious comment. I can't believe this guy would think that the Star Wars fans are like, this is high art. No, we know it's not high art. Hell, Inception wasn't even high art, but you have to watch it like 2 or 3 times to really understand the plot. I mean, it's the same way with the original trilogy. The original trilogy was not one that you could just sit down, watch the first time, and then be like, I understand everything. I saw everything. You can't do that with any film. I don't think there's a single film out there that you couldn't watch multiple times and not pick up new things. This is another thing that he kind of nitpicks at, is this idea that you're not going to see anything new every time you watch The Last Jedi. That's not right. That's not true. If you, as a film goer, and this is one thing I believe in because I'm a huge movie buff. I mean, look at my wall of movies back here. It's huge. I mean, if I turn my camera, you'd see I probably have about 800 movies back here. I watch movies all the time, and every time I see it, I see something new that I didn't see before, or I might have missed something before, and I watch it again, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't remember that plot point. What the hell? So I think that is kind of a thin argument of, I didn't like it at initial glance, and so I'm not going to watch it again because I really don't want to. I really don't want to see any kind of a film that I have to, it's multi-layered or it's nuanced. It's not. It's a Star Wars. It is a basic fantasy blockbuster action film. But that's not why we're saying go watch it. We're saying go watch it because you're missing the point of what the movie is, of what the movie says. You missed it the first time you watched it, and now we're telling you, no, you need to go back and really sit down and watch it with fresh eyes. Watch it again and see it. See it in your head and go, oh, I get it now. I see what they were going for there, because I got it the first time I watched it. And I saw it 3 times in the theater before it came out on DVD. And so, and every time I watched it, I was blown away by it. And that's the thing. My initial reaction was, this movie's awesome. That's why I went back to see it so many times. I saw it with some friends the first time. I saw it with another friend the second time. And I saw it with my in-laws the third time. My wife watched it twice, and she liked it. And she's not even a huge Star Wars fan like I am. So if my wife can go to this film twice, watch it, understand it, and not nitpick it to death, then I think this guy has missed the point completely of why we go to the movies. We go to the movies for entertainment. And yes, sometimes we look at movies like Star Wars and we're like, yeah. But sometimes I just go to a movie because I just want to be entertained. Okay? And so when you see me doing reviews on my channel, I'm not reviewing romantic comedies. I'm not reviewing regular comedies half the time, because they don't entertain me. I'm reviewing science fiction movies. I'm reviewing Star Trek and Star Wars and Mission Impossible and James Bond, because, and you can kind of see that James Bond is actually over my shoulder right here, because that's what entertains me, okay? And what entertains me may not entertain you, and so I get that, okay? So if this kind of movie, if The Last Jedi does not entertain you, then that's okay. But don't stand there and say, well, this is the worst movie ever, and it's not a piece of high art. Well, we know it's not a piece of high art. That's the point, okay? As for turning a blind eye to the blatant problems, what blatant problems are you talking about? At least the movie that I saw, and I don't even know if this guy really watched The Last Jedi, and this is one of the reasons why I'm saying go watch it, dude, because there aren't any real big blatant problems in this movie, and it's almost like this guy went and saw the movie and went, well, it doesn't stand on its own, so I don't think I like it. It's not supposed to stand on its own. And I don't know if that's maybe what he was trying, or if he was just thinking, well, I gotta have to do it this way. But I don't know, man. It's like, you have to look at it. It is a blockbuster film. And that's all it is. And it's supposed to entertain you. If it didn't entertain you, then don't go back and see it. But don't make a 30-minute video ranting and raving about how crappy it is when it doesn't have the problems that you're proposing. And then you don't even come up with specifics. And this is one of the things that his defenders, his staunch defenders on his channel, in the comments section of this video are like, oh, well written. I'm like, well written? He just ranted for 30 minutes. He didn't even come up with one single major gripe that was anything more than common sense would have taken care of. Okay, and I think that's kind of the other thing is, watch it with some common sense. If you claim to know the lore of Star Wars, then watch it in the context of the lore of Star Wars. You'll understand it better. And you'll start to think, maybe, just maybe, this actually does have a good storyline. Because it is there. You just have to see it. That's the problem. You're not seeing it. You're just kind of like, you've turned a blind eye to the entire movie, and then you're standing back and saying, well, there's blatant problems in it. Well, of course there's blatant problems in it if you're not actually watching the film. You turn your brain off when you walk in the door. This isn't a Die Hard movie where you can just sit back, turn your brain off, and go, okay, John McClane's killing bad guys again. Yay. That's not how it works, man. Okay? And, yeah, and like I said, my initial instincts is this movie's awesome. Okay? I've said it before. And I'll say it again, this movie is awesome. I love this movie. It is a great sequel. It is right up there with Empire Strikes Back, Attack of the Clones. You name the sequel, I'll probably love it. Hell, there's even some Bond movies back here that I hate more than I love The Last Jedi. So, I mean, it's like, yeah, and I mean, in being a Star Wars fan, I love all of the Star Wars movies. It's like, I love Episode 1. Yes, there's Jar Jar, but you know what? I put him in the back of my mind and I'm just kind of turn him off. I tune him out. I don't care about Jar Jar. The rest of the movie is awesome. It's vintage Star Wars. And the thing is, it's like people just kind of went, oh, it sucked. Okay, that's fine. Why did it suck? Jar Jar. Okay, that's one element in the movie. What else sucked? Well, Anakin's 9. What did you expect? You had to start somewhere. I mean, that's the thing. He had to start somewhere. So he started with Anakin being 9 years old. Okay? So again, it's one of those things where we got these new characters in Episode 7, and now we're kind of seeing the further adventures of these characters, and it's not done yet. And I don't know that he understands that. In this review, in the context of this review, or this video that he's doing, I don't think he understands that this is the middle part of a trilogy. There's 7, 8, 9. We're not there yet. Now, if 9 came and it didn't deliver on some of the things, and they weren't making any more after that, I could see where a person could come back and say, you know what, Episode 8 should have had a lot more to it. But we haven't even gotten Episode 9 yet, and now this guy's coming out here and he's saying, oh, this is crap. Why? We'll get further into this, as we go along, but I guess I'll move along to the next fallacy. I don't want to sit here and just rant for another half hour, but because I could go on and on and on about this, but I mean, we'll just get back into the thing here, and we'll just continue working on it. So fallacy number 2 kind of connects to fallacy number 1. So he basically said that the second fallacy that he hears from people is, oh, this is just a movie about space wizards and laser swords. This is just a fantasy film. And what did you expect? And so he says, interesting enough, he's heard people who make the first claim that it's nuanced, that you have to watch it again because it's nuanced and multi-layered, and then they just say that it's a fantasy film. So he says, well, it's not nuanced and multi-layered. So then they say, well, but it's just a fantasy film. And he already made that. He already said it. Well, this is just a basic blockbuster fantasy film. So, one of his other major arguments about this is that kind of says that with these people that make the first claim that it's something you have to watch multiple times. The second claim is it's just a mere fantasy film or it's just a kids movie. Well, it can't be both. It can't be a film that's so complex and multi-layered that you have to watch it multiple times to actually understand and get the nuance of what's going on, and at the same time be a mere fantasy film that's so simple that it's not particularly strong or well-told story, that it can't be both. So then he's saying is that it can't be because of certain genres of film, so like science fiction or drama or something like that, the genre doesn't define this story. And so, like, it should be, like, the storytelling should be whatever the heck it is the writers and directors wanted it to be, regardless of whether it's coherent, it makes sense, it's got plot holes or anything like that. He says that's absolute nonsense. The genre should not determine whether or not you tell a good story. Regardless of whatever genre it is, you should aim to tell a good story. If you're going to make a film that's really what the heart of it is about, good characters, it's about good story arc, it's about a plot that makes sense, it is about motivations that are clear and coherent. He says that's where this film falls down. And it's got nothing to do with the fact that this is fantasy storytelling. He also says that he says think about Lord of the Rings, for example, a profound piece of fantasy storytelling. There's I have to make sure I've got my notes right. You can say it's just fantasy, prime example of how, so Lord of the Rings is a prime example of how something like can be fantasy and a very well told story. And he says we don't expect Star Wars to be at that level of storytelling. And I'll get to Lord of the Rings in a minute. But I think that that's kind of one of the things that he kind of does is, and then he went on for a while ranting about that. So again, the high art portion of that argument is Brandon's. It has nothing to do with that. We're not saying that, we as the fans are not saying that this is high art. And we're not saying, oh my gosh, you have to watch Star Wars. It is that indie high art film. No, we're not saying that at all. And of course, you should aim to tell the best story possible. That's what they're doing. Okay? I mean, like, look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example. That is a good example of telling a multi-movie story arc. But let's go back and look at Episode 1. Episode 1 starts 32 years, roughly, before Episode 4. And it tells a story of Anakin Skywalker and how he kind of starts as a young boy. And even then he showed flashes of these moments of wanting to act out and be like we see him in later films. And, and then he goes and blows up a ship, and then he becomes a Jedi. And then the story fast forwards 10 years to Episode 2. In Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, we see him as a young man. Okay? Now, we had that gap of time. What happened in that 10 years? Well, we know that he's become a thing, but that's what the story aims to do. It starts to tell Anakin's story as he's standing there, as he's being this sort of jaded Jedi, thinking Obi-Wan's holding him back, he's thinking about all this other stuff, and dialogue aside, he's starting to show that hint of, I'm becoming a dark side person, I'm becoming Darth Vader. And then you get to Episode 3. Episode 3, he does become Darth Vader. And there's some really good story elements in that one. And then we fast forward another 20 years after that to Episode 4. So again, we have these gaps in time. And it's almost like this guy is sitting there going, well, maybe good storytelling to him is having those gaps in time. I don't know. Because, The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens takes place literally hours after each other. Literally hours after each other. It's not more. I think actually the novelization calls it like a day, because they had time to have a small memorial service for Han Solo, where Leia says some things. It's in the novelization. It's kind of interesting, but I mean, and it probably took Rey a day to get to Acto, so that means that Finn wasn't out for that long. Okay, so yeah, they literally take place days apart. And the thing is, it's almost like looking at it as one solid movie. Okay, you can't just take one of these movies and just nitpick the hell out of it, because that's not what it is. It's like, oh, I'm just going to take episode 4 and say Luke's a whiny little punk. Yeah, he's a whiny punk in episode 5. But, and then nitpick that. Just, oh yeah, they didn't have much characterization for Luke in that movie. Well, they're not supposed to. That's not what it's about. It's not about him having characterization in the way that you think it should be done. It's characterization in the way that fits the overall story. All 3 films. Okay? That's what they have to do. And they have a 30-year gap between episode 6 and episode 7. Okay? So we have this gap of time that they're trying to fill in for you. Okay, you might have to read some novels to fill in there. And they're trying to tell this brand new story, and they're trying to give you the storyline, and yeah, they might miss a couple of details here and there, but that's when it's going to come back in episode 9. That's where the details are going to be, because that's why we want to see these films, is because after episode 9 comes out, and I mean, I'm assuming that J.J. Abrams has done his homework, because, I mean, if you've seen the new Star Trek movies, he's actually done a pretty good job with those. So we're going to see some of that kind of coming in, okay? And so they're going to connect the story, all right? So, because that's what they did. Like Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's events that are going on in the movies now that were hinted at back in Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Thor, and all of that kind of stuff. You had this whole thing going on where they were hinting at things going on behind the scenes, and then over here they're payoffs. Okay? Plus there's new revelations, there's new setups. So we're seeing things go along. And I think the problem with this guy is that he's thinking that like Star Wars is somehow the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where it's like, oh, well, they had setups and teasers in this one, so they should have had payoffs in this one. That's not how it works. I'll get to that when we get to that. But I mean, it's like, that's the problem. This film is going to play a role when it gets to episode 9. This film, like this video that this guy made, is going to be really silly. You're going to go back and watch this after episode 9 comes out and go, what was this guy's problem? He really didn't understand this. And, because that's what it is. It's not just the story arc that he's referring to. It's not just limited to this single film. Okay? And every single arc does not have to have, every single film in this story does not have to have beginning, middle, end. So it's not like we have in episode 4, we have beginning, middle, end. And then episode 5, beginning, middle, end. And then episode 6, beginning, middle, end. No, it's episode 4 is the beginning, episode 5 is the middle, and episode 6 is the end. And I thought that was explicitly understood, that in a trilogy arc, that's how they do it. They start in the beginning, then they go to the middle, and then they go to the end. And that's where all the payoffs are, is in the end. It's not in the middle of the story, which is where we're at right now. But it's interesting that you should mention Lord of the Rings as a profound piece of storytelling. And it's one of those things where, as a writer myself, and I've written a couple of novels, I haven't gotten published yet, but I'm trying to work on that. But Tolkien was not an author. Okay, if you go back and actually read the stories, he is overly descriptive in some places and under-descriptive in other places. And I think Peter Jackson did a masterful job of cutting through the BS. You want to talk about minor plot points that go nowhere. Tom Bombadil, folks. Tom Bombadil has no basis in the story itself. He doesn't help Frodo. I mean, the only time they help him is because they go through the Barrow Downs, because it's the quickest way to Bree. I mean, it's literally a minor, pointless subquest that does nothing. Where was that in The Last Jedi? Some people could argue, oh, the whole sequence on Canto Bight. No, that was the filmmakers establishing Rose's character. That was actually a good thing to kind of show that here's Rose and here's her philosophy, and it's also kind of good because it shows Finn kind of warming up to her, because at first he's not really sure about her. Okay, so that's kind of the thing that we see here, is this whole thing. So, like Lord of the Rings, yeah, it single-handedly defined the modern fantasy genre, but there are much better writers out there than Tolkien ever was. Okay, and I gotta commend the filmmakers for doing what they did in The Lord of the Rings. Now, one last thing, let's look at the Two Towers for a minute. Okay, the middle part of Tolkien's trilogy. Okay, now originally he had written it as 6 parts. Okay, he had the first 2 parts became the Fellowship of the Ring, the second 2 parts became the Two Towers, and the third 2 parts became the Return of the King. And then there was an appendices and all that. There was appendices and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, But basically, that was kind of the whole trilogy. Was those 6 parts. And so let's look at the Two Towers for a minute. Okay. So if you had watched it, and let's say The Hobbit had been made before, or let's say you read The Hobbit, but you hadn't read The Fellowship of the Ring, and you went and saw the Two Towers in the theaters. It kind of shows the beginning. It shows Gandalf falling off of the cliff and he fights the Balrog. But you wouldn't know why he was falling off of that bridge in the dungeon that he's in. Why? Because you missed the first part. The first setup. The setup of they're going through the mines of Moria. Why is that significant? Because the elves popped a cap on an ancient demon, and that ancient demon basically came in and took them all out, as well as the goblins that were in there. So why? Yeah, and then Gandalf comes back, and he's all white, and he seems kind of mean and vengeful. So, like looking at the Hobbit, he seems very kind and gentle and playful, and in this one, he seems kind of mean. But if you didn't understand the context of what happened to him, the setup of him fighting the Balrog, of him doing what he was doing, then you wouldn't understand why that is. Okay? So that's kind of what it is with this thing. It's like this guy assumes that every single character in The Last Jedi is going to be the same that they were in Return of the Jedi, or that they were, maybe just that much time more, and I mean, we're talking 30 years here. A lot can happen in 30 years to people, okay? So you can't expect a static character development from one movie to the next if you're going to jump that far in time, okay? The thing is, we see that with Vader. Vader is the big bad of the original trilogy, and we know that. Okay, we see his actions in the original trilogy, so we know where he's going to be. We don't know how he got there, and so the prequel trilogy sets that up for us, and it brings it together where it's like, okay, here's him in Revenge of the Sith, and here's him in Episode 4, and bam, we make the connection in our heads. So again, you're assuming that you want Luke to be the same character that he was in Return of the Jedi. Is that what I'm seeing here? Because that's not what's going to happen. I mean, it's 30 years on. Luke is going to be a much different person. So yeah, I guess I don't understand his logic behind that. And so again, established lore. We just talked about this with the canonicity issue. I mean, this guy mentions that this guy mentions in his video in this part, he mentions established lore, like it goes against everything that we have as established lore. Are you referring to the Legends EU? Because that's not canon anymore, man. Okay, and we'll get into this a little bit more as we kind of proceed through the rest of this. But again, this is not the same canon that we had before. It's being rewritten by Disney and Lucasfilm, and they have the rights to do that. So if they want to reestablish the Star Wars universe, they have every right to do it. And it's not like they're saying we're going to tell horrible stories. Phasma is a wonderful story. Holy cow. Go read that book. It is amazing. Like, it talks about, like, Phasma's origin on this planet that was, like, basically destroyed by an ecological disaster during the Clone Wars, or during the Galactic Civil War, or something like that. And so, and then this mining company came down and, like, scorched the planet, and there was all this other stuff that went on. It is an amazing read, and it's really good. Aftermath, Lost Stars, anything like that is really good, and it reestablishes a lot of those beloved characters that we have, while simultaneously giving us new characters to know and love. So I would recommend that instead of saying, oh, we have this established lore, it's not established anymore. They're re-establishing the universe themselves. And they're not letting genre define the story. They're literally letting the authors kind of go back and make brand new stories. They're not retelling old stories. They're making brand new stories. And that's kind of one of the things that I just kind of wanted to say. So, you know, that's the thing. Disney can rewrite the universe how they see fit. If they want to make Luke a grizzled old veteran sitting on a planet somewhere, they can do it. It's their universe. Okay? You know, I mean, that's the whole point, is it's their universe, and they'll tell the stories that they want to tell, regardless of what the fans want. So it's just up to us to just kind of say, and, you know, like, just do it. So, yeah. And so, yeah, let's just move on to the next one. Fallacy number 3. The third fallacy that he hears is a claim that people like him, who are critical of The Last Jedi, somehow were upset about the fact that there was a character development that happened with Luke Skywalker, and that they changed some of the other favorite characters, and then they, the critics of The Last Jedi, didn't like that character development, and that they should have changed these characters, and they shouldn't have changed these characters from the end of Return of the Jedi. So his argument is he doesn't see a problem with that character development. He thought that the way that Luke, that they created him as this sort of disillusioned, grizzled, old shell of a man who hates the world, but he doesn't think that Luke Skywalker should have been the same as he was in Return of the Jedi. He said that's just kind of silly that there should have been. But one of the things that I didn't understand about him saying is he says Luke is one of the most established characters in Star Wars in cinematic history. His story is so well known, and his character traits are well developed. And he's saying that you have to earn that change in direction. So you have to earn this, you know, grizzled old man sitting in the middle of nowhere. You know, and it's like, I think it's just really silly when, you know, he thinks that there's this thing. And so he said that his brother, he said that he didn't like the fact that they didn't give him a good motivation for what happened between him and Kylo Ren. His younger brother, this is one of the major things that I have an issue with, is he said his younger brother turned to him and said, you know, what they should have done, and his version of the movie is what they should have done was they should have had Luke Skywalker realize what was going on with Kylo Ren, and then refuse to carry on with the training, and that would have been the trigger for Kylo Ren that got him so angry and upset that he would have flipped out and destroyed the Jedi Academy. And then Brandon goes on to say that what they should have added another little plot point that perhaps Luke realized Kylo Ren was getting out of control, and so he thinks, well, if I go and leave my students in the care of the elderly staff, I can go and find Leia, his mother, and bring her back, and she can talk to Kylo Ren and convince him to perhaps tone things down a bit, and we can bring him back from the brink. And while he's trying to retrieve Leia, that's when Kylo Ren flips out, and he says to everyone gathered there, "You're either with me or against me," which is the thing we've seen before the Sith, the whole Sith thing. And that's what. And then the ones that go with him become the Knights of Ren, and then which satisfies that plot point. And then those who didn't, he slaughters and destroys the place when Luke gets back, discovers this, breaks his heart and breaks his spirit. And then he starts talking about how Luke Frank Spencered the whole thing. And I guess Frank Spencer's a British comedian who kind of bumbles around, and he always makes an absolute mess of things. And so what he's saying is that Luke going in and kind of reading Kylo Ren's mind at night and doing that is a Frank Spencer-esque moment in his mind. And he just said it's bad writing for that, and that's kind of how he kind of looked at it. And so he's basically saying, if you're going to try and get us to that point of Luke wanting to murder his nephew, then in a well-established story, you've got to earn it. You can't have Luke saying, murdering my nephew might be the only way to solve this problem. It's just bad writing. So, first off, many of the plot holes that he talks about here, I'm going to debunk in another video. I have a Screen Rant article entitled 15 Things That You Completely Missed in The Last Jedi, and I kind of go through and debunk each one of those. And I think that one of the things is that there's a reason why Luke is on the planet of Acto, and they clearly spell it out for you in the movie. So I think this is the problem that we have with a lot of these people. This guy, Brandon, you are not Rian Johnson. You are not Kathleen Kennedy. You are not the writer, director, producer, or anything else other than just a YouTube personality coming out and spilling your guts and saying, this is what I would have done. It doesn't matter. Okay? I've been hearing this argument since 1999, literally. When episode 1 came out, there were people that were out there like, oh, this is not what I would have done. I'm like, are you George Lucas? Can you slap a product name on it and it sells because it has that product name on it? Like, literally. Product name. Bam! Can you slap it on anything and you sell it because it has that product name on it? No? Okay then, shut up. It's not your universe. It's theirs. Okay? It's not yours. So stop trying to act like it's yours. Now, if you want to go out and write a fan fiction about what happened, okay, that night at the Jedi Temple, then go write a fan fiction on it. Don't stand here and say, oh, it's just bad writing. It's not bad writing. It's called a slow reveal, okay? And this is one of those things where if anyone has ever written a movie or studied writing at all, slow reveal is when you have flashbacks that slowly reveal the story. And the audience has to connect the dots in their head, okay? So you have to kind of understand, this is where we start, this is where it ends, and it's cut into pieces, okay? Now, one of the things that we learned from the original trilogy was Jedi see things from a certain point of view. And that's what we get in this movie. At first, when Luke first tells the story, he went to go confront Kylo Ren, and Kylo Ren brought the house down on him. So Rey still thinks that Kylo Ren is just a monster of a person, okay? But then she hears from Ben the story of his point of view of what happened. And he's kind of like, oh, did Luke tell you what happened? She's like, you're just a monster. And he goes, aha, he didn't, I can see. He came out and he wanted my power, and he turned on his lightsaber. He was going to kill me, haha, and I killed him. I turned on him first, haha, yeah, I'm the man. That's his point of view. The third one that we get is actually the one that matters because it's the truth. Because Rey says, "Tell me the truth. Did you create Kylo Ren?" And he goes, "I saw moments in his training of the dark side in him. And so I went out to the hut." And he goes, "As I was standing there, I was going to confront him, but he was sleeping. And as I was standing there, I was probing his mind. And he saw this moment in his head, and we hear it auditory-wise. We hear the people dying, and he realizes, oh my God, Snoke has literally turned this guy against me. And in a moment of weakness," and he says this, "in a moment of weakness, I turned on my lightsaber because I thought I could end it right then. But it passed. Because he's a Jedi." Okay? So now, I'm gonna explain the story here for a minute. Okay? I am. Okay? The story is this. A few years before The Force Awakens, we don't know exactly how long because it doesn't say. Okay? But a few years before the events of The Force Awakens, Luke took a group of Force-sensitive students to a planet to train them in the ways of the Jedi. Okay? At that time, the First Order was a shadowy whisper on the edge of the old Empire. The New Republic hadn't given the First Order much thought and was trying to make sure that it stayed where it was on the fringes of the Outer Rim. Okay? Now, if we go back and take a look at this map really fast, we will see that this right here is where Snoke came from. Starkiller Base was all the way up here in the unknown regions. So he came from the Outer Rim, and that's the thing, he came from the outer regions, and we'll get back to Snoke in a few minutes. But the thing is, okay, is that so Leia sensed that her son, Ben Solo, was trying to act out as Vader because he began to idolize him. Okay? Snoke began to sense Ben's power through the Force and worked to try to bring Ben under his banner as a new Vader. In fact, The Last Jedi says, in the beginning, Snoke says to Kylo Ren, "I saw in you raw potential and something truly special, a new Vader, but instead, I just see a boy in a mask." Berates him. Okay? So Leia says, "I'm going to send my son to train Ben." Okay? Ben saw this as basically his mom pawning him off on his uncle. Okay? Like, "Oh, you didn't want me around the house, because I've got a little anger, and you just pawned me off on my Uncle Luke." And we know that from The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Okay? Both Leia and Luke acknowledge this. Okay? There's the story. There it is. It's all there for you to connect if you just have a little common sense. Okay? And so this newfound anger began to manifest itself inside of Ben Solo, creating the new persona of Kylo Ren. Okay? Snoke had begun to subvert Ben through the Force, seducing him to the dark side. Snoke saw himself as a reincarnation of the Emperor, and that's from The Last Jedi. That's actually from the novelization of The Last Jedi. Snoke, there's a moment where Snoke is kind of like sitting there on the supremacy, and he's thinking to himself that he is the new Emperor, basically. Like, he idolizes the Empire. Okay? He always has. And that's the Empire rose, the First Order rose from the ashes of the Empire. So at this point, we don't know that the Outbound Flight Project was actually there. We just know that the remnants, according to the Visual Dictionary, again, Last Jedi Visual Dictionary, if I go here to page 34, he has attendants, these purple guys over here. Okay? It says, Snoke's retinue includes mute alien navigators who originated in the unknown regions. Were it not for the ancient hyperspace trails blazed by these towering servants, the Imperial survivors who fled into this uncharted realm would certainly have perished. These navigators design and operate the Oculus viewing scope in Snoke's throne room. So, okay, the Empire went out there, okay, and they found Snoke's planet somewhere after the Battle of Endor. And at this point, Snoke, and this is all conjecture, okay? At this point, Snoke, okay, is idolizing the Empire, and he's like, wow, this is really cool. He finds out Coruscant is the center of the thing. Sends guys to Coruscant, okay, to glean all of the files that they can. Okay, they clear out the data vault in Scarif, alright? That's how they found out about hyperspace tracking. I mean, that was the thing. See, Rogue One came out, and in Rogue One, there's Scarif, and as Jyn is punching through the computer, she sees this thing says hyperspace tracking. Okay, and so there's so that was us as the audience saying, it was a little clue that when we got to this movie, when they said, "Whoa, wait a minute, there's hyperspace tracking." Everybody's like, "Whoa, we didn't know you could do that." So there's that. And so Snoke decided to change up the things. Instead of having a normal, so the Empire used to just go and get, conscripts, and then put them in Stormtrooper armor and send them out to fight. Okay? That's why they're not very accurate. The First Order decided to do something Snoke decided to do something a little different with the First Order. They smash a planet, grab all the younglings, and then educate them. Okay? Put them through re-education training as stormtroopers, gives them numbers, takes away all their individuality. Okay, and so when we see Finn as a First Order stormtrooper, when people are like, "Whoa, you broke away from that?" That's why it's such a momentous thing. If you understand how they're building their military, because before the stormtroopers were just fodder. Now the stormtroopers are actually a threat, because they can give them any order and the stormtroopers are like, "Yes, sir," and they go. Okay, so that's the point. Alright, so to the rest of the story, because Snoke needed a new Vader, okay, he needed someone with blood ties to Vader himself, hence Ben Solo. Okay, so consulting with the archives of the Empire, okay, he found out about the defeated Endor. So they go to Endor. He sees the funeral pyre with Darth Vader on it, and because he knows that Ben Solo idolizes Darth Vader, he picks up the mask to present to Ben Solo, which he does. We see that in The Force Awakens. Okay? Ben Solo, meanwhile, during his training, started becoming increasingly angry. We heard that in The Last Jedi. So Luke goes out to confront him, reads his mind, and here again we hear that audio cue of the deaths of his students. Okay? And for one fleeting moment of weakness, okay, he pulls out his lightsaber, ignites it. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to kill him." But then he realizes that wouldn't solve anything. Okay, and it would also lead Luke, if Luke were to just strike him down in anger, it would lead Luke inexorably towards the dark side as well. So he closes down his lightsaber. But there's that moment where he had his lightsaber open, and that's the moment when Ben woke up. Okay, because Ben tells him all he saw from his master was he thought his master was trying to usurp his power. Like he sensed I was becoming too powerful. Ben was saying that. He was sensing I was becoming too powerful. He wanted all that power for himself. That was Ben's point of view. So Ben was literally lying there on the mat, and he looks up at Luke, and Luke is like, "Rrr," and he's like, "Oh my God." Luke looks down into the scared eyes of his nephew, and he feels shame. But in that moment, Ben chooses to become Kylo Ren, and that's when he pulls his lightsaber to him, and they clash, and then he pulls the house down on Luke, and that's when he goes out and does exactly what this guy said. Now, as to the thing, these are not Sith, okay? The Sith are gone, okay? Actually, the Jedi Visual Dictionary, the Last Jedi Visual Dictionary actually says, if we go back to page 34, okay, go back to page 34, it says, "Heart of Darkness, Snoke is powerful in the dark side of the Force, but he is no Sith. That 1,000-year lineage stretching from Darth Bane is canon now, according to the Visual Dictionary, okay, to the last Sith Lord Darth Vader was undone when Vader died by destroying his mentor Darth Sidious. Okay, the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy foretold the end of the Sith. but it never predicted the end of darkness. And we'll get back to that in a minute when we get to the next fallacy. So that's kind of how it is. And so Luke decided at the end of that, when he woke up and he saw that all of his students were dead, and a handful of his students were not among the dead, which presumably they went with Kylo Ren to become the Knights of Ren, then Luke decided in that moment, I have nothing left to live for. That's the point. Luke has always run away. From the moment Luke was on Tatooine, he's always run away. He ran away from responsibility with his uncle. He was always looking to the future. He was always bumbling about. He Frank Spencer's everything. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's like, how can you watch a Star Wars film from the original trilogy and not see Frank Spencer-esque behavior from Luke? He does it all the time. Episode 5, good example. Luke sees a vision of Cloud City, and his friends suffering, and he's like, I gotta go to them. And Yoda's like, no, stay here, complete your training, man. You listen to me now. I'm your mentor. Stay here. And he's like, no, I gotta go to them. And he jumps in his X-Wing and he takes off. And when he lands on Cloud City, he runs off to go face Vader. Okay? And after he fights Vader, he learns this terrible truth. Now, had he actually spent some time, then I think he would have been able to handle it. But that's the point. He didn't. He Frank Spencer's everything, which is why Yoda shows up and bam, smacks him in the head with his gimmer stick like, dude, you're an idiot. Okay? You're not paying attention to me. You never have. Okay? And that's the point. Okay? He Frank Spencer's everything in the Star Wars universe. So this whole notion of, well, you gotta earn it. They did earn it. You just didn't see it because it wasn't what you wanted. Okay? And that's the problem. And we'll come back to this in a couple fallacies from now. Okay? But I'm going to move on to fallacy number 4 here. I'm kind of at about an hour right now, so I'm going to try to kind of get through the rest of these and get this done here. So, the 4th fallacy that he kind of comes up with is the claim that the original trilogy, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, that wasn't perfect storytelling. It had flaws. So what are you complaining about this one for? His argument is no one ever said it was perfect storytelling. The problems and flaws are different in the original trilogy than in The Last Jedi. We don't know much about Palpatine's backstory. He starts going off about Palpatine in Return of the Jedi. No one got upset because we didn't know his backstory. We know everything we needed to know about Emperor Palpatine. It was just really well done storytelling. We're introduced to him briefly in The Empire Strikes Back, and then he comes on into his own in Return of the Jedi. Emperor Palpatine is this awful evil character who is like he's Darth Vader on steroids, and he's got all these extra powers. He doesn't understand why Snoke he's like, where did Snoke come from? When he watches the original trilogy, his question is, where's Snoke fit in the Empire, and where's he been all this time? They're not starting from scratch. You have to give us an explanation of all this. So you have to give an explanation that makes sense. It's not the same thing. Again, it's not good storytelling. Again, I've heard many people say that the original trilogy had perfect storytelling. I've heard that all the time. People were like, "Oh, the original trilogy was perfect. It's this perfect trilogy. It has everything in it." It's not, and I'm glad that he's acknowledging that it's not. But I've heard that people have that. But that aside, we knew that Palpatine was evil from the get-go. Okay? We know that Snoke's evil from the get-go, too. I mean, he's controlling Kylo Ren, who is a Force user. And if you watch Episode 4, and this was mentioned in the comments, I didn't really think about this when I originally made this, but Palpatine was mentioned in Episode 4. Because when they're walking into the conference room, and they're kind of arguing. Mahdi and Tej are arguing, and Tarkin comes walking in with Darth Vader following him, and he says, they'll no longer be a problem for us. I've gotten word from the Emperor that he has dissolved the Council permanently. So we know that there is this Emperor, this big bad out there. We knew that Tarkin wasn't the end-all be-all big bad. We knew that there was somebody more powerful than him. Okay? Because he's just the one behind the gun saying push the button when I tell you to push the button. Okay? He's not the one that's pulling the strings. Okay? He's not the puppet master. He's just one of the puppets on the stage. So we knew all that. So the looming question when watching the original trilogy isn't where does Snoke fit in all this, because we as the fans of The Last Jedi understand that Snoke is not part of the Empire, never was. Okay? Now, I had a theory. Okay, before I get into my theory, but one of the things is, it's like he's like, well, we don't know the origins of this character. Yeah, we don't know the origins of this character. We never knew the origins of Emperor Palpatine either. Okay? We didn't know the origins of Palpatine until 1, 2, and 3. Because we see him as a senator in Episode 1, we see him as the Chancellor in Episode 2, and we see him as the Emperor in Episode 3. And in Episode 3, he spills to Anakin how he got the dark side through the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. So, I don't know why we haven't seen an origin story on Snoke, and I'm assuming it has to do with something that's going to happen in Episode 9. Again, this movie is the middle part of the trilogy. There's still one more movie to go, and then we're going to have this overarching story that's going to answer most of our questions, if not all of our questions, at the end of it. And then, I would imagine that just like they did with like the Clone Wars, and just like they're doing with between 3 and 4 and 6 and 7, they're kind of creating all these new novels that are going to fill in the gaps, and that's what they're going to do. They're probably going to have a book, probably like Tarkin, like Thrawn, that's going to explain Snoke and his origins and why he did what he did. Okay? But I'm assuming that they're not going to do anything about it because they have a plan in mind for Episode 9. Okay? Because back before, in the middle part of the 90s, before Episode 1 came out, nobody, except for Timothy Zahn, mentions the Clone Wars or has any books about the Clone Wars. Why? Because George Lucas was like, that's a story I'm going to do. Once I've told my part of the story, then you can start telling your story. And so I'm assuming that's what they're probably going to do. It's just like, and then once Attack of the Clones came out, they had in 2005, they had the Genndy Tartakovsky, 2003 to 2005, they had the Genndy Tartakovsky short animated films. And I actually have those here. And this. And so I'm assuming that things like this will happen, okay, once we get the story of Episode 9. And it will start filling in the blanks. Because I'm assuming Disney has told the authors, hey, we don't want you to say, this is how we have to do it. Or, we're going to box ourselves in by having someone write a story and then we have a movie where it kind of like debunks that or it doesn't follow that story. And so we don't want to be kind of hemmed in, closeted in by that. Because that's why they took the original Legends EU and threw it out. Because they wanted to tell the stories that they wanted to tell. Okay? Rogue One is not this. I love this book. But you know what? Rogue One was good too. I like it. Okay? And I can still read this book and enjoy it. And I can see things that happen in this book that they took elements from this and put it in Rogue One. You can see that all over the place. They took elements from different things and they put them into the movies. That's called fan service, okay? And I like that. I like that they're doing that. So yeah, that's the thing. Snoke wasn't ever part of the Empire. Ever. End of story. He was never part of the Empire. He idolized the Empire. That's the difference. Okay? And because he idolized the Empire, he was trying to correct the flaws in the Empire's methods. Okay? The Empire built a big planet-destroying super weapon. Well, the moon-sized one didn't work. Why not build a planet-sized one then? Hence Starkiller Base. Making super star destroyers? Well, why don't we just put massive orbital cannons on them? So we can blow things up from orbit. Hence dreadnoughts. I mean, yeah, AT-ATs? Well, those were brought down by simple snow speeders. Let's make them bigger. AT-M6s. That we see on Crate. Come on, man. I mean, here's the thing. You talk about Palpatine being all-powerful, and he was all-powerful. He knew a lot. The only thing he didn't realize was, at the very end, because he was so focused on trying to kill Luke Skywalker with the lightning, what he didn't realize was Vader was turning. Okay? Snoke was sitting in a chair. He wasn't even trying to electrocute Rey. Rey was sitting on the ground. He wasn't even holding her with the Force. Okay? And he couldn't even feel the Force moving the lightsaber right next to him? How's that all powerful, man? He has the dark side, that's it. He's a Force witch. He's not all powerful. Okay? So, I bet Palpatine would have seen that coming. Honestly. At this point, I think he probably would have done that. So, it's like, here's the thing. Okay? And then we'll move on to the fifth fallacy. It's just, go back and watch the film. Okay? That's why we're telling you to do that. Go back and watch the film, because the story points are there if you can connect the dots in your mind. Okay? Alright. Fifth fallacy. That he thinks is, that he thinks is being told by people is that there's this claim that the film is going in a new direction. Okay, he doesn't see a new direction. He doesn't see in a new direction. He just thinks that they're shuffling around characters, they're killing some off, they're just rehashing the same story again and again and again, and it's a badly executed Star Wars film. Torch passing? Anyone? Honestly, that's what these movies are. They're torch-passing movies. Okay, we saw that. I'll go back to Star Trek. Star Trek 09. Okay? They wanted to have a new generation of the original series characters. Okay? So they put together a movie that had a torch-passing scene where it was basically you had Spock, old Spock, played by Leonard Nimoy, and young Spock, played by Zachary Quinto, and there was a scene of them together where it's basically Leonard Nimoy saying, "I'm handing the torch over to you, sir." It's torch passing, man. Okay? These characters are 30 years old. You can't expect them. If you're okay with saying, yeah, Luke can't be the same character that he is in Return of the Jedi, and then you're like, but I hate that they made him a hermit on a planet because they didn't earn it. That's what a torch-passing movie is, man. You can't expect the people to stay static all the time. And the film is going in new directions with new characters. Let's talk about Finn for a moment. Finn was a stormtrooper, okay? He ran away from the First Order, and the whole first movie he's trying to get away from the First Order. And he ends up going to Starkiller Base on his own. Not because, hey, we're flying in the Millennium Falcon and we drop out of Lightspeed and Alderaan and the Death Star's still in the system and we get captured by it. That's not the same thing. He literally was like, hey, I'm going to rescue Rey. Okay? The aim of the characters in Episode 4 was to get the Death Star plans to Alderaan. Okay? And they didn't know it was blown up. And Obi-Wan felt it through the Force. He didn't know exactly what was going on, but he felt the death of those people through the Force. And then they get there, and they realize that Alderaan's been blown away, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute here, what's going on? And then they get captured by the Death Star. And then in the course of that, they end up discovering that the princess in the message is stuck in the detention block. So they go to rescue her just because they're thinking, well, if we get her out, then she can kind of lead us to the rebels and we can actually kind of figure out what's going on. So That was why they rescued the princess. It wasn't, they were not on a rescue mission. Like, they weren't saying, hey, we're going to go rescue the princess. No, it's, they got captured, and while they're sitting there on their butts doing nothing, they see an opportunity to go do something. So they do. Whereas in Episode 7, Finn goes to Starkiller Base with the specific goal of rescuing Rey. And while they're there, they capture Phasma and they make her turn down the shield so that the guys can come in and try to blow it up. And so there's that. And then, this is something else we haven't seen. They took the fight to the big bads on their turf. Now, one could argue in Return of the Jedi that they kind of did that on Endor, but that's not the same thing. That would be them saying, you know what? Palpatine is on Coruscant. We're going to go to Coruscant and we're going to kill him. That's taking the fight to the big bads. This is something we have not seen before. Okay? Taking the fight to the big bads on their turf. Rose and Finn kind of come up with this plan of going and infiltrating Snoke's ship with a specific goal of getting, of deactivating the little hyperspace tracking module so that the Resistance can get away. And he does it to save Rey. Okay, he does not want Rey to come back to the fleet before he gets done with this, because he does not want Rey to come back to the ship and get blown up when it runs out of fuel. How's that not a new direction? I mean, honestly, I don't get that. It doesn't make any sense. You don't see a new direction? How do you not see a new direction? I see a new direction everywhere I look in this story. Because, like, Rey, she didn't blow up the Death Star or Starkiller Base. Poe did it. And here's the thing. People were like, oh, it was a retread of Episode 4. No, Episode 4 had you on the edge of your seat the whole time. Like, you're like, is he going to make it? 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 Okay, the whole way until, because it's like, and he was basically dead. And then, Millennium Falcon comes out of nowhere and shoots Vader and knocks him out of the way. So, yeah. Poe didn't have that. He had one TIE fighter on his tail. Okay? As he's flying down this little dinky trench into this regulator, and he literally goes boom, 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 boom. And that's it. I mean, honestly, that's it. That's the whole thing. And you're going, what? Why? Doesn't make any sense. So, again, there are new directions everywhere. You're just not opening your mind. Okay? You're just kind of sitting back and saying, I hated this one. And you know what? Because I hate it, I'm not going to watch it. And that's fine. That's your opinion. Okay? And you're entitled to your opinion. I honestly don't care. The other thing is hyperspace ramming. When have we ever remotely seen anything like that in any Star Wars book, comic, movie, anything? Okay? Isn't that a new direction? Honestly, answer me that. Okay? If you're watching this, post down in the comments and answer me that. Okay? You tell me exactly where you've seen in a Star Wars media a hyperspace ramming weapon. Okay? Outside of The Last Jedi. I'm not talking about The Last Jedi. I'm talking outside of The Last Jedi. Where have you seen hyperspace ramming? Post it up in the comments below, because I don't remember ever hearing about it anywhere in any Star Wars film. Okay? Alright, on to fallacy number 6. And this one gets my blood boiling, because it's like, this is the point at which I'm watching this video, and it's like, I remember I had my headphones in and I'm watching it, and this guy comes in and he says this fallacy, and I'm like, seriously? He starts his argument in this fallacy, and I'm just like, seriously, dude? Did you really just do this? And that's when I knew I kind of had to make this video and kind of talk about this, because it gets my blood just pumping. Alright, so his thing is, the sixth and final fallacy, is that all of the criticisms, or most of the criticisms from the last year, are nothing more than a bunch of diehard fanboys who got upset that their fan fiction wasn't made into a movie, and that they had all these fan theories in their heads about the last year, about The Last Jedi, and what it should be. And because the writers didn't write their versions of The Last Jedi, they're just upset. And they're just butthurt and screaming about it. His thing is that he says they're failures in their telling of the story. That's where the problem lies. He says he had absolutely no fan theories about what he wanted to see out of this film, and he went in with a blank slate. And what he saw was a film with some objective flaws, and he had a bad experience, and he walked away pretty ho-hum. Over the next couple of days, I realized, after watching the film, the reason why I was ho-hum is because the storytelling was not particularly good. He goes, we're still in the honeymoon phase of this movie, and, you know, what happens in the honeymoon phase is everybody just goes gaga, and, you know, he saw that people were saying that it was better than The Empire Strikes Back, and, from some of the fans, he's heard that it was better than The Empire Strikes Back, and then he says, that he goes, what happens about 6 months to a year later, that people will realize in subsequent viewings that once the mania has kind of died down a little bit, that everything was just kind of really just, you know, bad, and that it's objectively flawed, and that there's nothing that's going on, and you know, and he basically also says that it's got no heart, a lot of ideological preaching, and then there's no self-sacrifice, there's no virtue. It's just people telling us about these things. They're not really being presented on the screen in a meaningful way. And he says that the jokes are kind of almost written for like a Seth MacFarlane, the Blue Harvest, and the Star Wars parodies. He says some of the jokes he thinks are kind of more fitting for that rather than for The Last Jedi and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of his whole thinking on this thing is, you know, he kind of thinks that, you know, all of this kind of a thing, and it's just, yeah. So I think it's upsetting to me, and it's insulting to me to think that people like Brandon and Left Foot Media are die-hard fans. Because a die-hard fan would love it no matter what, okay? Like, I have a friend who's a total Trekkie, okay? And he loves everything Trek. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, he loves it, okay? And, like, he loved the new J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies. Even though people were like, they're the worst movies ever. And these so-called die-hard fans, again, die-hard Trekkies are like, meh. So, this is the thing. It's insulting to people like me to think that people like him are die-hard fans. Okay? But here's the thing. You would have to be completely blind not to see the actions, the motivations behind the actions of the characters. Honestly, you have to be blind. There is no other way that you could possibly watch the movie and not think, oh my gosh. I mean, unless you are completely just, you turned yourself off to it, okay? Because sure, the movie doesn't spell it out for you, like the whole thing with Kylo Ren, like I was talking about before. The whole story of Kylo Ren is there if you can connect the dots in your head. But this guy's not doing that. He's like, well, I would have done it this way. They pretty much did it that way. Because the thing is that moment of weakness is what created Kylo Ren. That's the point. That's the revelation. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Okay? Let's get back to this whole thing of I had a bad experience. If you had a bad experience with this movie, if you're watching this and you had a bad experience with this movie, it's because you set your personal bar this high. And the movie went here, and it was good, and it was really good, but because it didn't meet your expectation of what it was, like this guy says, I went in with a blank slate. No, you didn't. If you went in with a blank slate and you came out with this many problems, then that's on you, not on the filmmakers. Because your expectations, your blank slate as you call it, your expectations were too damn high. Okay? Because you were expecting something and it didn't deliver, and now you're pissed. Okay? And that's because, I mean, I saw that with episode 1. The filmmakers made a good movie, and I mean, it was hyped to hell, and it was up here, and the movie delivered, and everybody was like, it sucked. No, it didn't. Okay? I'll grant you Jar Jar, but this is the thing, okay? This is the problem I have with these critics of The Last Jedi, is that if you're having this much of a problem with it, it's because your bar of expectations was way too high. Okay? This guy didn't walk in with a blank slate. There's no way. Because if he walked in with a blank slate, he wouldn't be making this video right here and going, there's so many fundamental problems in this movie. Because there aren't any fundamental problems in this movie. Okay? And the other thing is, he doesn't even talk about the problems. Okay? The only problems that he's talked about so far is Luke. He's like, well, I don't like what they did between Luke and Kylo Ren. That's the only problem he's brought up. Okay? That's the only thing in the entire 28 minutes, and I watched this whole entire video. In the entire 28 minutes, he never mentions another problem. The only other person he mentions is Leia. Okay? The fact that Leia, kind of stuck out her hand like this and flew through space and went down to the airlock. And he's like, well, you didn't earn that either. Well, they don't have to. She's a Skywalker, you dolt. I mean, that's the problem with people, is that the thing is, I called this, okay? I knew that this was going to happen. When Episode 7 came out, when Episode 7 was announced, I thought, and then I saw the first preview for it, I turned to my friend, I have an ex-Marine friend, he and I are big Star Wars fans, and I turned to him and I said, hey man, this is going to be the new Episode 1. This is going to be the one that everybody hates, okay? And then everybody's going to look at it and go, maybe Episode 1, 2, and 3 aren't that bad after all. And I've seen people, I called it, and I've seen people out there that for, 10, 20 years now, they've been like, oh, the original trilogy sucks, or the prequel trilogy sucks, original trilogy is the best. They're like, oh, you know what? That prequel trilogy is not so bad now. I'm like, really? Took you 20 years to figure out that it's not that bad? When we the fans, we the diehard fan, the actual diehard fanboys have been telling you for 20 years that it's awesome, and you're now just figuring that out? What the hell, man? Okay? You can't, no, this is BS right now, okay? So this is complete and utter BS. This guy has no recourse on this. And the fact that he says, I had no fan theories? What a load of shit! 3 fallacies ago, this guy just said, this is what I would have done with Kylo Ren and Luke. And you want to tell me that you have no fan theories? Okay? I walked in with a blank slate. I had no fan theories? Yeah, right. You had a fan theory exactly what should have happened. Because you were watching Episode 7, you saw that scene, and in your head you concocted a story, and when you walked into The Last Jedi, it wasn't that story, and you hate it. You just did this 3 fallacies ago. You talked for like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes on what you would have done. Okay? That is BS. It is hypocritical BS. Okay? And that pisses me off. Okay? This whole argument of it's not what I would have done. Oh my God. Another thing he mentions here is he says that there were setups and teasers in The Force Awakens that were not delivered upon in The Last Jedi. So, I want you to do this, okay? I want you to do this. Tell me, give me an interview where Rian Johnson, okay, said every single question that you have in The Force Awakens will be answered in The Last Jedi. I guarantee you, you will not find one, because I looked at a lot of different interviews with Rian Johnson, and he never once said, okay, that all the setups and teasers in The Force Awakens will pay off in The Last Jedi. He never said that, because that's not where the payoffs are. The payoffs are in Episode 9. This is the revelation period, folks. Alright, let's just, really quick, let's go back to Episode 4. Okay, we're going to go back to Episode 4. The setup there, okay, is Luke. How did my father die? Obi-Wan says, a young pupil of mine named Darth Vader. Okay? He was my pupil until he turned to evil. Betrayed and murdered your father. That's the setup. Okay? Gives Luke a target. Gives him a way to go. Episode 5 is the revelation of, no, I am your father. Luke's like, what? No! Obi-Wan told me different. He told me you betrayed and murdered my father. And he's like, no, Anakin, Darth Vader, one and the same. That's the way it is. That's the revelation. Okay? And that was a huge revelation. And the payoff was in episode 6. Okay? Because the setup of that was, the setup of this is that in episode 5, another kind of a setup revelation is they tell him, don't rush off to face Vader. Don't do it, man. And Luke does it anyway. I talked about this, a Frank Spencer-esque thing that he did. So he runs off to face him. And he learns his terrible truth, that Vader's his father. And the payoff of that is in episode 6. And Yoda tells him, you weren't ready for that, man. That was what we were trying to protect you from. Okay? And that's exactly what it is. He says, in no uncertain terms, he says to Luke, you rushed to face him. That incomplete was your training. And not ready for the burden were you. Okay? And then he proceeds to tell him, now you're ready. Now you're really ready to face Vader. Now you're a Jedi Knight. Now when you face Vader, you will be ready for that taunting, for that stuff. That's the point. Setup, revelation, payoff. Okay, that's how it's structured. That's how every single trilogy is structured, is around the setups, the revelations, and the payoffs. Okay? The setup in episode 7 was Kylo Ren murders his father. Okay? Kylo Ren murdered Han Solo. Said, I'm torn apart. And it did. It tore him apart. Snoke says it in this one. Okay? There's a small payoff for you, because you didn't see that, apparently. Okay? In The Force Awakens, we learned that Luke created Kylo Ren in a revelation moment. Okay? That he was responsible for creating Kylo Ren. And that revelation, okay, kind of brings us back to the payoff that's coming in episode 9. We don't know what that payoff's going to be yet. We have to wait until episode 9 hits the theaters. But that's what I'm talking about. So you can't expect, okay, you can't expect this to be the end-all, be-all. This is not a duology. This is a trilogy. Okay? So that's what it is. Okay? Because it has to follow that structure, and that's what they're following. Okay? So the setup in this one was, the setup in episode 7 was Kylo Ren kills Han Solo. Okay? Luke learns about it. It's a revelation. Luke doesn't know. He cut himself off from the Force. Okay? So he learns that Han Solo was killed by Kylo Ren. And he doesn't want to train Rey because he doesn't want to fall into the same trap. But Yoda shows up and smacks Luke in the head with his gimmer stick and is like, dude, you didn't listen to me. You never listen to me. Okay? Yes, you pass on your good knowledge. Yes, you pass on the good things, but you also pass on the bad. You pass on the failures. It's like, look at me. I failed to stop the Emperor, but I still trained your narrow ass. Okay? So that's the point. Okay? Was that Luke, that was the point that Rian Johnson was trying to make with this movie, is Luke always ran away. Luke always Frank Spencered everything. It happens all the time with Luke. That's what he does. Okay? So for you to stand there and act outraged and butthurt over this movie because you think it's bad storytelling because it didn't tell the story that you wanted is BS. Okay? So, I'm going to go to the showdown on Crate. And I'm going to leave you guys with this. Okay? And actually, before I do that, I'm going to talk about Leia a minute. Okay? I mentioned it a little bit before. But one of the things that he does is he mentions that Leia kind of is being a big... let me see here. Just 1 second. Because it kind of comes at the end. He kind of mentions it in passing. He's just kind of like, oh, Leia was, doing this random thing and being a thing. I can't find it. But anyway, he talks about Leia. And it's like, my whole thing about Leia isn't she a Skywalker? And if you believe in established universe and established lore, didn't Luke train her at some point in the novels and the comic books of the Legends EU? So doesn't it follow that because she's a Skywalker, Luke probably would have given her some of his knowledge so that she would be more well equipped to deal with things? I mean, isn't that just general knowledge? I mean, I guess I don't understand how this guy can stand there and say Luke Skywalker is the most established person in cinematic history, but Leia? Nah, screw that, man. You can't do that to Leia. Which is it? Either you believe in the Legends EU timeline, and you're going to believe that that's the only timeline that can exist, and so we have all these character traits of Luke Skywalker, supposedly, yet you're going to somehow have him, or have Leia be the same character that she was in Episode 6? Come on, man. Choose. Is she a Skywalker or isn't she? If she's a Skywalker, then at some point, she probably picked up a few things from Luke. She might have even walked up to him and said, after the Battle of Endor, and said, hey, can you train me? We don't know. That's something that Disney has yet to have anybody do, is show that. Okay? So, granted, maybe they didn't earn it in your opinion. But you know what? It's in the Legends EU. And if it's in the Legends EU, they can use it here. Okay? Without your permission. Alright? So stop. Enough is enough. Okay? Stop this insanity of, oh my god, it's the worst story ever told. It's not. It's there for you to see if you just watch the damn film. Okay? So stop it. All of you. Okay? So I thank you for sitting through this video. Okay? And now I'm going to leave you with this. Okay? This is one of those little nuggets, okay, that we saw. So when Kylo Ren stabbed his father, okay, on Starkiller Base, there was this moment where he puts the hand, where Han puts his hand up on Kylo Ren's face like this, and then he falls off and it kind of drops away like that. And I remember turning to my friend, my ex-Marine buddy, and I said, dude, that's going to haunt Kylo Ren through the rest of the trilogy. Okay? That's a setup. Here's the revelation. Okay? Kylo Ren, they're standing there on Crate. Okay? Kylo Ren's, the force projection of Luke and Kylo Ren are kind of facing each other. And Kylo Ren says something to the effect of, I'm gonna destroy the Resistance, and I'm gonna, and the war that we're fighting right now with the Resistance is over. And when I've killed you, I will have killed the Last Jedi. And Luke says, amazing. Every word in that sentence was false. The rebellion is reborn today. The war is just beginning, and I will not be the Last Jedi. To which Kylo Ren replies, I'll destroy her, and you, and all of it. To which Luke says, no. Strike me down in anger, and I will always be with you, just like your father. And then Kylo Ren stabs him and he says, see you around, kid. Revelation, people. So what the payoff is going to be, we don't know, but it's coming. Okay? December 2019. Set your watches. December 2019. Be there in the theater for episode 9, because I guarantee you that when you watch that film, you're going to come back and watch this, and you're going to watch the Left Foot Media video, and you're going to go, wow, that guy was way off base. Left Foot Media was way off base. Whereas this Star Wars fan, he knows what he's talking about. Okay? So thank you again for watching. This is Russ from Russ's Movie Corner signing off.